Welcome everyone online. Welcome everyone online or watching later on our YouTube channel at the Tulsa Center for Spiritual Living today. I'm always, I don't know, just really connected. Today I turned around and more people were in the room. And I'm so glad you're here. Um, I, I can only speak for myself, but I really needed that moment of grounding today in our meditation time. I really felt a shift of people gathering together in community to just take a moment to pause, to focus on the breath, to know that we're here for this time that sometimes we don't take in our daily lives, to just connect with that feeling down inside that says, I'm here, I'm connected, I'm one. And it's so good to be back with everyone. I've been away for 2 weeks and I had an amazing couple of weeks of conventions and sitting for hours a day and hearing good information, but probably more importantly, hanging out with my colleagues and laughing and getting to know each other better. I also played with a friend from 3rd grade. We've known each other from 3rd grade and we both turned 60 this year. And, there's just something about connecting with that person, that deep level of friendship. And we wouldn't have a deep level of friendship without practicing vulnerability. If all we talked about was sports and the weather, we'd have a great friendship about sports and the weather. But we wouldn't know about our heartache and heartbreak. We wouldn't know about our loves and joys. We wouldn't know about our fears and frustrations. And there are friendships like that. But to me, that connection, when we can feel ourselves drop down into that place of I'm real, that's where the magic happens. So I give my thanks to Kim, my wife, for stepping in and speaking a few weeks ago. Yay, Kim. She had a wonderful time and she looks forward to being back with everyone again soon. One of the other things I learned about vulnerability this week is in the company that I work in, we call each other not coworkers, but cohorts. And that's not just a name, that is a beingness that comes out, right? What I learned this week is that for us to be able to function as a highly effective team full of trust and playfulness, that it really requires us to be grounded in vulnerability, even in a secular workplace, and also totally true here in spiritual community. I was talking to one of the department leaders who recently joined a special program called for development of high impact leaders. And he did a week retreat away from the office. And I said, so what did you learn? And I was expecting to hear some wisdom from some management book or a leadership book. And he said, wow, I had to get really vulnerable. His takeaways from that first week intensive was not about heady learning, but about the way that he lives and shows up in the world. He shared that participants in the beginning of the program shared about experiences in their life that helped form the way they are today. And there's no way to stay surface level when you're having that kind of conversation. I think about how we may walk past each other in the halls in a workplace or at the Quick Trip, or sometimes even in spiritual community where we don't have a chance to really connect. We could imagine for just a moment the invisible backpacks or luggage that we're toting around with us throughout our lives. Not that they're negative, but they helped inform us and they sometimes hold us down. And that when we stay on the superficial, those things never have an opportunity to come out. They never have an opportunity to come out. And there's lots of reasons that may happen, and we'll get into that today. We can do this in spiritual community too, right? Sometimes feeling the subtle pressure to put on a good face and be shiny, happy people, despite maybe having financial issues or addiction or interpersonal or health or family issues that are going on in our lives. And I get it. There's a time for respite to leave those things behind. but there's also a power that happens when we gather one-on-one or in an intimate community to be able to let that light shine, to let it out. When we open up our heart space with real sharing, we can feel it in our gut. It's that dropping down from the head through the heart into that feeling center that says, I am one with spirit right now. This is real. This is real connection, and it's okay. As cohorts, as we call ourselves at work, when we know more about the real behind us, behind the masks that we put on, we have that deeper connection. And I got to do that this week with my friends at work. There were opportunities for hugs and for play and for sharing of what's up in my life that's beyond the 8 to 5 knowingness of life. And I saw people love and support each other in ways that doesn't always happen at the workplace. At the end of the week, we were full of hugs and I love yous, showing that there's an energy of being more than, and it makes us an effective, cohesive, playful team that's doing really good work in the world. And we do that here at our church as well. Glennon Doyle, who's an author, said, we can be shiny and perfect and admired, or we can be real and honest and vulnerable and loved. But we actually do have to choose. Am I going to stay under and closed and within, or am I going to let it out? So as we explore what gets in the way of vulnerability, fear, uncertainty, and comparison are the big three. They're just some of the many things that arise when we set the attention of living life from a more vulnerable and authentic space. We'll explore these areas not as something to push against, but instead opportunities to lean in and even befriend. We can befriend fear, uncertainty, and comparison. It's through this understanding that each experience can be utilized as a guide that takes us towards a path of greater awareness of ourselves and others. The cold never bothered me anyway. Ernest Holmes, who is the founder of this faith, says, there is something within you beyond all doubt and fear, something which has never been limited by your acts or destroyed by your feeling. This is the only something that can make you whole, that place that is beyond doubt and fear. And the science of mind teaches us there's something within us that has never been affected by fear, uncertainty, or comparison, never been touched. This place is the home of spirit, the individualized expression that resides in all of us. This space is the very birthplace of vulnerability and authenticity, and it leads to that urge that propels us forward into a deeper expression of ourselves. This space makes room for fear and uncertainty and meets it with the essence of the divine. Let's talk first about fear. I'm kind of scared. Fear can sometimes be a powerful barrier to vulnerability. It can seem like a vast canyon outstretched as far as the eye can see. This fear can be experienced in different ways by different people. Fear of what others may think, fear of trying something new, fear of rejection, or fear of just not being good enough. Shame and blame may be some of the places we go to in the face of fear. For some, individual and societal frameworks and constructs may contribute to that fear and limit the ability to be vulnerable. Fear, although not always pleasant, can be a helpful emotion that can shed light in the areas of our lives that require a closer look, as well as in our communities, our workplace, our relationships, where changes are needed in order to create safer spaces for vulnerability. We aren't supposed to share in this way. So when we feel called to fear, it can bring us back to the place of superficiality. Think about that moment, after a conversation when we say, Anyone replayed a conversation in their head afterwards? Like, and or walked away from a conversation. People are constantly opening a door, inviting us to engage in conversation. Now, when we have the opportunity to think, wow, that triggered something in me that I kept inside, that I didn't let out, that I didn't engage. And it's fear that's doing that piece that holds us back from that. Often a deep breath, right? A deep breath can help us go to that place to say, all right, and I do this in my head sometimes. I can feel an instant choice, right? Ooh, I feel fear. Here's an idea that popped in my head. I'm going to, in a moment's notice, shove it down and leave it for later because it's too risky, or I'm going to open my mouth and let it out. And when I open my mouth and let it out, like, you've heard people say, I do own my words, but I don't own your reaction to it. Instead, when I let it out, that now we have this, it's like pickleball, right? We're moving this back and forth between us, doing with the best that we can to just hold in our hearts, stay in that grounded space when we really connect. Regarding uncertainty, to be vulnerable is to become friends with uncertainty. We love certainty and routine, and often the thought or hint of uncertainty may stop us right in our tracks. Most of us want a plan, then a backup plan, then a backup plan, the backup plan. Not everyone. This can go on endlessly and hamper our willingness to take risks and to be vulnerable. Uncertainty is a part of wholeness itself. We can choose to see it as a barrier to opening ourselves up, or we can meet it with that word that keeps coming up this year, curiosity. And then move in ways that are in alignment with the truth of who we are. We then may find the cracks that uncertainty often brings are paved over with the awareness that one thing, back of all things, is love. This awareness opens that door and invites us through. We have moments of fear, we have moments of uncertainty, and we have the willingness and the ability to take the choice, take the step forward, to open our hearts and speak our truth. Theodore Roosevelt said that comparison is the thief of joy. Another theme that's come up over this year, right? Comparing ourselves to others. Comparison can also impact our ability to be vulnerable, to be willing to risk, to be willing to step out and reveal our true selves. The instinct is often to take stock of all the people in the room and then gauge our self-expression based on how we rank ourselves in comparison to everyone else. And I thought about that this week. I was in a room with 700 or 800 people, maybe more, at the conferences the last 2 weeks. And I just love going up to someone new, introducing myself, and then see where it goes. But I can also remember a time when I would be the person sitting towards the back of the room, waiting for the safe place to find someone I knew and recognized to be able to have the safe conversation. And what I've learned is that the joy of opening up the door and connecting with the heart space of someone new brings new ideas that I may not agree with. It brings stories of life that let me know it's easy to compare. We're all in this together. What happens to one happens to all of us, and there are lessons to learn from those. The opportunity exists to look in the areas where we are comparing ourselves to others and therefore playing small. When we don't let ourselves out, we're not doing a full expression of life. And we can explore how we can use vulnerability to harness the magnificence in our own authentic selves. So fear, lost my word, uncertainty and comparison. So it's Easter. We'll talk a little bit of Jesus today. So a journalist called Amin Hudson wrote a blog recently called Jesus, the Vulnerable King. we can reflect on the core of the Christian faith that's remembered in this weekend of death and rebirth, not only about resurrection, but also about the life that was lived. We may often think of Jesus as that Son of God, a symbol of power. But Jesus was also the quintessential courageous essence of vulnerability. He took on the religious establishment. He confronted and cast out demons. He proclaimed the inauguration of the kingdom of God. He miraculously demonstrated that he was and is the King of Kings. Yet he did all this while constantly being vulnerable with his circle of friends and his Father. Jesus's vulnerability was very intentional. He prayerfully chose his 12 disciples, and then he intentionally chose Peter, James, and John as his intimate inner circle. He courageously extended himself to his disciples, not waiting around for connection, but pursuing it. For 3 years, Jesus let the disciples in on a very intimate aspects of his daily life, pulling Peter, James, and John away with more intimate access to him and his heart. Then in the Garden of Gethsemane, he revealed the sorrow and distress of his soul to his friends. It was on that very night that Jesus told his disciples, "No longer do I call you servants, for the servant does not know what his master is doing, but I have called you friends. For all that I have heard from my Father, I have made known to you." For all of that divine essence within, for all of those experience of knowing that I am the one, that I am the light, that I am connected to all that's good, I'm sharing that intimately with you, my friends. To follow Jesus is to be his friend and to be a witness of that divine vulnerability. By making himself vulnerable, Jesus opened up the floor for us to do the same with him and with others. The Christian message is that we can be both fully known and fully loved. Jesus knows our weaknesses and doubts. And in Psalms, it said, he remembers that we are dust, and yet he loves us with an unfailing love. And I could say that we do that same thing with each other. When we know that we are spirit talking with spirit, that we are the oneness of divine love, talking to the oneness of divine love, it makes the choice to be vulnerable and real all that much easier. And because of that, we can also risk vulnerability in all of our relationships while becoming a haven for weary friends who no longer want to keep up the facade of unrelenting strength and perfection. It's just so boring. In his resurrection, Jesus not only presented himself to his friends, the disciples, but he also had an incredulous Thomas feel his nail-pierced hands and place his hand on his spear-impaled side, showing vulnerability in revealing the scars of death that at the same time became wounds of triumph. And the root of vulnerable is the word wound. Jesus' sacrifice wasn't simply a one-off act of love. While he hung there naked and shamed, he represented the culmination of his friendship with the saints, his love for the world, and his vulnerability to the masses. So choosing to be vulnerable enough to express our authentic selves is not always easy. However, the choice becomes whether or not we allow ourselves to be limited by our experiences that attempt to stand in the way of showing up as our true selves, or be willing to look them in the face and move anyway. Rumi said, "Move, but don't move the way fear makes you move. Move, but don't move the way fear makes you move." And so understanding that fear, uncertainty, and even comparison are not things to be avoided, ignored, or suppressed. Instead, their presence becomes a beacon, a microscope in which to view our lives, our communities, and the world. It is in this close-up view that we can begin the work of removing the barriers to vulnerability and live life truly out loud. Ralph Waldo Emerson says, to be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else is the greatest accomplishment. So let's be ourselves. Now let's move into just a place of quiet for a moment. And if you're comfortable, allow your eyes to close, feel your feet on the ground, and take a breath in. Let it out. Breathing in and letting it out. And just as we lit that light at the beginning of service today, that flame of love is ignited in each of us right now. That representation of connection to source is the one that allows us to be more real, more vulnerable, and more magical in our daily being. So think for a moment now of a place and time in your life where you were at that point of choice in connection with another. Did you feel fear grip you and suppress and hold back? Did you feel that butterfly in the stomach? That butterfly that says, fear, be with me and support me. That butterfly in the stomach is spirit talking to you to say, this is real, stay here, stay with me. And let it out. Now, whether that choice was one to stay quiet or one to engage and go deeper, we know it was perfect. And as you move through life, we know that those opportunities present themselves all the time. So it's this blessing in knowing today that moments of fear or uncertainty give us a choice to step into the void, to cross that crevice into deeper connection with ourselves and with those in our world today. And so I speak this word of truth on this service today. I speak it knowing that each of us is the power, presence, divine love, and wisdom of life itself. And that we have within us the allness, the depth, and the breadth of the universe itself. And that as we vibrate to a higher level by connecting really with ourselves, with others, and the God of our understanding, that we step into the place of realized magic manifest. And so with a light of gratitude for all that is good, all that is perfect in our world today, with gratitude for those who said yes to being here right now, fully present, awake and alive, I rest my word, rested into the law of life that is always responding with yes. And so it is. Amen.